Today we will be building an explosion-proof one light without the exit. The tools you will need are a rubber mallet, tap magic, manual hand tap with a 1032 tapping bit, flathead screwdriver, a 3/8 T-handle, 3/32 T-handle, and a 7/64 T-handle. You'll also need a mixing paddle, Chico sealing cement and fiber compound. You'll need a drill with a 5/64 drill bit, wire strippers, 2-hole Wagos, 1032 set screws, ring terminal for your ground, wire crimpers, pipe wrench, Loctite, and a 3/4 cheater bar. Also, you will need your motherboard setup and Delrin, which we have pre-glued into the housing. You will also need the battery, the battery connector wires, the LED light connector wire, your pre-sanded LED light, which you take into the belt sander at a 45-degree angle to remove the corners. You will also need 16 4-wire, about 2 to 3 feet in length, pre-stripped. And then you will need the items from inventory, which will include the base, an EXP-EMG-LE, which we've taken to fab and had them drill out at a 3/4 inch NPT. And the EYM, the unions, the nipples, and the elbow. Alright, first things first, what I like to do is assemble my ground screw, because it's very easy to forget and QC will ding you if you don't have it. So go ahead and remove the flathead ground screw using your flathead screwdriver. Pull that out of there. And getting your green wire for your ground, go ahead and strip back about 1/4 inch or so. Making sure it's nice and clean. Add your ring terminal. And go ahead and crimp that down. Making sure it's nice and snug. It's not going to come loose. Then what I find easiest to do is take the terminal head and kind of bend it back towards yourself. That way you can put the screw into the terminal and not have it fall out where you're trying to put it into the housing. So once you've got that, go ahead and just set it back down over the hole and go ahead and pop it in there. Making sure that it's nice and tight. And then go ahead and feed your ground wire through what will be the left-hand side of the base when it's standing upright. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the bases and remove the plugs. Actually, on this one you can leave the plug in on the left-hand side, the one that's been pre-tapped. We'll go ahead and take the plug out of here. And for now, we're just going to set it to the side. Now, what I like to do is get the unions assembled first. So we're going to take our EXP-EMG-LE that doesn't have the center tap. We're going to be building this to the right, so this square punt will be facing the right-hand side. So go ahead and put it in the jaw horse like so. And then taking the male end of your union, looks like this, go ahead and unscrew it. And then with your thread lock, add just a little bit on there. Then go ahead and screw it into the base. sure it's nice and tight with the pipe wrench. To the side, and now we'll move on to the center piece that has been pre-tapped. We're going to go ahead and put the other union into this side. Making sure all your threads have Loctite on them. And remember, you want to get this as tight as you can. Okay. That should be good. Alright. And we'll go ahead and set this to the side here. To our base. And set this up in your jaw horse. And we're going to take the EYM, remove the center plug, set it to the side, and go ahead and take some Loctite, just a little bit on both ends. Okay. And take 2 of your 3/4 inch nipples and feed them into both sides of the EYM. Try to get them as tight as you possibly can by hand first. It'll make it a lot easier to crank it around with the cheater bar here in just a second. All right, so now with the smaller plug that's still in the assembly facing down, we're gonna go ahead and add some more Loctite to the other end of the nipple. And insert it into the base. This one you want to make sure you get completely tight, that it will not budge. So in order to do so, it helps to take your cheater bar, thread it all the way in, and walk it around. Everything should sit flush. Like so. Now we're going to move on to our pre-tapped HKB-GL. Go ahead and add some Loctite. And again, you want it to be as tight as you can, so take your cheater bar and making sure that everything lays flat. 90-degree elbow. Add some Loctite to the insert there and thread in your next nipple. Get it hand tight, like so. Take the union, thread that on like so. Make sure it's on there nice and tight, otherwise that union will spin. Okay. Now we're going to take the 90-degree elbow. I like to do this larger fluted end facing up. Get some Loctite on your threads here. Put it on there. Getting it as tight as you can if you need to. And grab your cheater bar and pull it around so it sits facing up. Alright, stop at the assembly part here. At this moment, you're going to want to take your LED lead wire, which we'll be connecting to here. Make sure you have the small end. There's two different ends right here. One is significantly smaller than the other. Make sure that the small end is coming out from here. So either way you want to feed it, you can feed it from the inside or through the top, it doesn't matter. Just making sure that the small end stays coming out. Alright, moving on, we're going to take the connector piece of the union. Go ahead and put some thread lock inside the threads. And feed it over the wire onto the nipple, like so. And then, with your pipe wrench, making sure the pipe's on securely. With your pipe wrench, go ahead and get this. Okay. And make sure when you do this with your pipe wrench to only grab the top of the nipple here, because this is visible to the customers. So you don't want to lock onto it with the threads on the, or the teeth on here. It'll scratch it up, so just grab the top of it. And now we're going to take the base with the union that we put on there. Go ahead and thread the wire through. And go ahead and secure that in place. What I like to do before I move on any further is take the LED light and go ahead and clip it into, or clip the wire into the light. That way you're not going to lose the wire back down through the pipe. And then go ahead and take your pipe wrench. Alright. And now if you look from behind it, everything from the base all the way up should be flush. Get your drill with your 5/64 drill bit. Alright, so what I like to do is get the light in place just so I can get a guesstimate about where I want to put the hole at. So once you've got the light there, sorry I can't hear. Go ahead and put your drill about 3 threads back or so on the outside of the housing. And let the light come out. And pop through it. So yeah, after you drilled your hole, put the light back in and butt up with your bit against the light and slowly hold it in place and press through. Go ahead and take your 1032 hand tap with your tap magic. Take your set screw with your 3/32 T-handle. Just go ahead and start the thread just a couple turns so the screw stays in. Hole for your first screw is lined up. holding the light in place. You can let it go down. Drill through. And this is, putting it back in is in order to ensure you don't crack the plastic light. So just, because they're kind of delicate. So once you have your hole drilled, go ahead and put it back up. Put your bit up against the lens and drill through. Once again, with your hand tap and tap magic. Remove the tap. Grab your other set screw. Using a 3/32 hand tool. Thread in there. And this time we can go all the way in. Once you got your first screw set through the lens, go over to the next side. And when you're doing this, make sure that your set screws go past the threads on the outside of the HKBGL housing right here, otherwise you won't be able to screw the lens back on. So if you want to look in there. Make sure those set screws are past the threads there. Cover. Make sure you've got a good seal. 7/64 T-handle. Just go ahead and tighten down your set screw. Just about 1/4 to 1/2 of a turn. Be careful, these are very fragile and sometimes will break off inside there. Go ahead and pop it out of the jaw horse. Come over to a flat surface. Now, you can see we've still got the light wire coming through. This is where we're going to be putting all of our motherboard and wiring components. So first off, we're going to take our 16/4 wire. We've taken the red, the black, and the white. We're going to twist the ends together right here. And we're also going to take our battery wire, which has the black plastic connector that's been soldered to white and black terminals, or black leads. I like to feed the battery wire through first because it's a little bit more delicate and also has that plastic end on it, which is kind of harder to work with. There it goes. Okay, so go ahead and pull your battery lead through. I like to leave more coming out the end. That way you've got more room to work with up here with all the other wires. Now we're going to do the same thing with our, go ahead and just feed it through. Just be careful you don't push your battery line out while you're pulling this down. Make sure you hold it in place. All right. So now I want to go ahead and make sure at this point that all of our wires are separate from each other, that they're not twisted. Because when we go to add the Chico fiber and the cement, they can't be twisted, so they all have to be apart from each other. For our motherboard here, I'm going to go ahead and take all of our wires and strip them all back about 1/4 of an inch. From the left-hand side, the 2 black and white wires that come out on the very far left side are for the light itself. These 2 wires right here, the other black and white, are for the battery. It'll say battery, BAT, on the board. I don't know if you can get in there and see it. Continue to strip back our wires. Right now, I like to take my Wagos and add them to all the wires on the board. sure that you have a solid connection. Go ahead and gently tug on it, make sure it doesn't come out. So once you've got all your Legos connected to the board, then set that aside for the time being and move on to your wiring inside the unit. What I like to do is go ahead and take your power leads, get them stripped back. And now for this being a one light only sign, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this connector that normally sits in to the board right here. There's two little receptacles where you can put this connector, but seeing as how we're only going to be using one light for this application, it'll stay lit, and then once the power is disconnected, it will come back on battery power. What we need to do is remove this connector right here. And go ahead and strip these back. Try to hang on to these wires as much as you possibly can while you're doing this, because if you lose them, they're really kind of small and it's hard to get a hold of them again. So once you've gotten those stripped back, we're gonna add, I like to do these ones first, coming on the board. Remembering that the far left side, the black and white wires, are for the light itself. These ones again are for the battery. So for the light, you want to connect the black to the yellow. Make sure that's nice and snug. And then you want the blue to the white. So from your light, your blue is neutral and your black is positive. Now moving on to the battery. Just match the colors, black to black, white to white. And last but not least, go red to red, black to black, and white to white. After we've got this completed here, we always have to call QC and get a Wago check. So, hey Jimmy, can I get you in the conference room, please? Feed my wires through the left-hand side of the unit right here. We got all of our wires come out one side, minus the battery, because the battery's going to sit in here. So I like to pull them all through and then get them as snug as we can without yanking them out. And then making sure they're all the same length. Go ahead and cut them. And while we're waiting for our Wago check, we can move on to labeling our wires. 120 volt AC, which will be the black line. The 277 will be the red line. The battery will obviously be for the battery cable. And the neutral will be the white. Our 120 volt goes to the black. Can I get a Wago check, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry about the hold up.
That's all right.
Alright. Good, good. Got the ground. Alright, good deal. All you need?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. The best thing to do is test it before we go ahead and put everything together. That way, if there's something wrong with it, we don't have to take it back apart. So, in order to do that, go ahead and take your 120 volt line, which is your black. Strip that back. Strip your neutral back. connect your battery, like so. Alright, now when we plug it in, you should see the red indicator light that we glued into the Delrin right here come on, and the light will come on as well. Okay. So our red indicator light is on, showing that the battery is charging, and our emergency light is powered. I personally think the easiest way is to take the transformer on the board here and place it in first. That way it fits underneath the lip of the housing right there. It gives you a little bit more space to work with. And then you can take all your wires and kind of push them around. That way you've got more space to shove the board down in there, as you can see. That way it's not crimping any of the wires when it's pressed up against it. Everything kind of moves off to one side, and this can lay down at an angle. Then go ahead and take your Delrin and place it on top. Make sure that it's as snug as it can possibly be. Then we're going to take our drill with our 5/64 drill bit and come up almost to the rim of the housing on the Delrin, just a little bit farther back. And go ahead and start, and then kick your drill back at an angle. Just let the drill bit do the work, and it'll go all the way through. And what you should be left with is a beveled hole to which we can add our 1032 set screw. And everything should be snug. Got no movement in it. This one's over there. Go ahead and add the lid for the base. And we'll tighten it down with the 7/64. Again, only about until it's snug. You don't want to overturn these because they do break off. We're going to add our plugs that we've set aside from earlier. One to the top, right here. And then one to the side on the base right here. And using our 3/8 hand tool, get them in there as snug as you possibly can. And once we've had QC check our Wagos and make sure all of our wiring components are good, we've sealed up the light and the motherboard, we're going to move on to the fiber and the cement. Pretty decent sized handful. You want to roll it as tight as you can possibly get it. And I mean, like, you want to mash it together. And then we're going to put it inside the center of the EYM and force it up into the nipple here, like so. And you also want to use it to separate your wires, if you can see inside of there. And you're putting fiber in between each wire, that way it holds them all apart from each other. So now when I push my finger back in here, I can't push up anymore, so that means the whole nipple is full with the fiber and it's got resistance to it. So now we'll move on down to the bottom here and just repeat the same process, like so. Then pull them aside, and I'm pushing against it, so it's got a good seal inside the nipple, and all your wires are separate. I like to take an old soda can and just chop the top off. My mixing kettle. Slow that down a little bit. And then you want the consistency of a milkshake or slightly thinner. I prefer to pour it thinner, that way you have more time to work with it and make sure it sets up smoother. If it's really thick, it's just gonna be globby and it's really hard to work with. So, but you can always add more water, you can't take away, so start small. Okay. So once you got the consistency of the cement that you like, I like mine to look kind of like a melted milkshake, that way it pours easily. And take our rubber mallet and just slowly pour into the center of the EYM. I like to lift it up because gravity works. It'll help pull the cement down. Give it a couple bangs with the mallet. Come back. Oh, don't go too fast. Let gravity do work for you here. And when you're doing this, you need to make sure that you fill the pipe up to the thread line. You need to have 5 threads showing, no more, no less. So when I get it there, I'll show you what it looks like. Now I'm gonna try to clean this out. That way you can see it. And working from one side to the other just helps keep it level. It'll start to come up on one side. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and when we come back in and clean it up, you'll see one more thread up underneath the sides. All right, now once the Chico's set up about 3/4 of the way, or until it's hard enough to pick out, you just go ahead and take your little booger picker and technical term, booger picker. Just go in and go through the threads and run all the way around on each thread. Got all the threads cleared out. Clean it out as much as you can. Sometimes a towel helps. And now you should be able to count the threads pretty clearly, see that there's no gaps or any holes coming underneath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 threads. Last but not least, if your booger picker's not working too well and you've got some really dried on Chico inside, you can take your 3/4 tap, crank it down, and that'll help loosen up any really dried on Chico that's in there. And then take your plug. Make sure it sets down 5 threads, no more, no less. And then you can move on to stickering. We put our logo over the Kilark on each one of the housings. Cover the Kilark here, make sure that they're even. Assembler number sticker there. product information sticker. Take your battery, make sure your battery is inside, not connected. Go ahead and give it one more shake, make sure any loose stuff that's not supposed to be in there comes out. Put your battery back in. Make sure your lid's set on tight. And there you have it.